Disclaimer: this video contains disturbing content and is not suitable for children or sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The scenes depicted may be unsettling and are intended for a mature audience. By continuing to watch, you acknowledge that you are doing so at your own discretion. In the heart of the American Southwest, two friends, Mark and James, both in their mid-20s, set out on a hiking adventure through the rugged terrains of Navajo Nation. This region, steeped in ancient legends, is often whispered about in tales of the elusive Skinwalkers, malevolent witches capable of transforming into animals or even possessing humans. After a day of traversing the arid landscape, they pitched their tent under a canopy of stars, the vast desert silence enveloping them. As midnight approached and the campfire that they had previously kept burning slowly died out, the temperature dropped and an unsettling stillness settled in. Around 2 a.m., Mark stirred from his sleep to find James slipping out of the tent. James murmured something about needing to relieve himself, grabbing a flashlight before stepping into the darkness. Mark, still groggy, acknowledged him briefly before drifting back to sleep. Time passed, and Mark awoke again, this time to an eerie quiet. The usual nocturnal sounds were absent. Glancing at his watch, he realized that James had been gone for over 20 minutes. A sense of unease crept in as he sat up and listened for any sound outside. Unzipping the tent, he peered into the darkness. About 70 feet away, illuminated by the pale moonlight, stood a figure resembling James. Yet, something about it seemed off. The figure remained unnaturally still, its posture rigid, as if uncertain how to move naturally. Calling out for his friend, Mark expected a response, but none came. Instead, the figure simply stood there. The longer he stared, the more unsettling the details became. The limbs appeared elongated, the joints slightly bent at wrong angles. When he shone his flashlight toward the figure, the eyes reflected the light too brightly, like those of an animal caught in the dark. His unease deepened, and he called for James again, his voice laced with uncertainty. Still, there was no reply. The figure then moved, but its motions were wrong, jerky, disjointed, as though unfamiliar with the body it inhabited. Mark's mind raced as he recalled the stories of skinwalkers, beings that could mimic human appearance, but not their essence. They were said to appear as animals, often coyotes or wolves, but could also take on human forms, especially those of recently deceased individuals. Fear took hold of him as he backed into the tent, his hands fumbling for the knife in his backpack. The figure then produced a sound, an imitation of James's voice, but something about it was distorted and hollow, lacking the warmth of true speech. The false voice pleaded weakly, as though in distress, but the unnatural tone sent chills through Mark. He knew now that this was not James. Summoning his courage, he shouted into the darkness, demanding that the presence leave them alone. The figure reacted, its glowing eyes narrowing as it let out a guttural growl, something no human should be capable of producing. Then, it moved toward the tent, its body contorting unnaturally with each step. Just as Mark braced himself for the worst, a blinding light flooded the area. The creature hissed and recoiled, retreating into the shadows with unnatural speed. Turning in desperation, Mark saw James standing behind him, his flashlight in hand and his expression frozen in terror. James, his voice unsteady, explained that he had gotten lost and had only just found his way back. He, too, had seen the figure and knew that something was terribly wrong. Neither of them slept for the rest of the night. They kept the fire burning, their weapons within reach, waiting for the first light of dawn. As soon as the sun rose, they packed their things in silence and left the cursed place. The legend of the Skinwalker, now an undeniable reality, etched into their minds. The Navajo warned that speaking of skinwalkers can draw their attention. Mark and James never discussed that night again, but the memory lingered, a haunting reminder of the ancient evils that lurk in the shadows of the desert.